Part 14. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 131. There is a secret in Leipzig. Neither Tirpitz nor her own admiral told her about it. The reason why a secret is of course that no one knows it. The secret of Leipzig is to sneak out of your room every night and go to the most crowded street at night, and then stand on the roadside and wave to people. If you are not pure-minded, you can probably imagine the blonde girl leaning on the railing of the bridge, or sitting in the blurred red light, waving to passers-by, and then saying something like, "Uncle, come and play." She coquettishly wished that everyone could see her pretty red lips, gorgeous face, and alluring figure. However, when Leipzig was sitting on the roadside waving to people, she wished that everyone would stop paying attention to her face. She didn't want acquaintances to know that Leipzig, who was not wearing makeup and wearing a peaked cap, was a roadside vendor. She didn't want others to know about being a hawker. There was nothing shameful about making money based on skills rather than body, but she just didn't want to. Therefore, she hid the small handicrafts she made as well as the purchased goods under the bed. No one would come to look through her room. Whether it was Bismarck or Prince Eugen, she was just an assistant, without Tilby. Such evil deeds. She had been doing a lot of this kind of work before she met Tirpitz. Buy small commodities from the wholesale market, and then go to the busiest streets in the city center to sell them. Hairpins, cartoons, wooden crafts, bracelets, roly-poly toys, a mess of products. It's just that her business hasn't been very good all the time. Instead, there are people who use the opportunity to buy goods to strike up conversations. However, she is not a gentle person. Her temperament is sharp, and those who strike up a conversation don't get much good words from her. As for those who normally want to buy, there is often a smile, but not much. Supposedly, casual stalls are not allowed to be set up beside the bridge in Chuangziu. After all, a pedestrian street is specially designated for stalls. However, there is a large flow of people by the bridge, and occasionally people will play and sing by the bridge. It can be called a mini square, so there are many people who set up stalls here with a sense of luck. Occasionally, the city management would come to evict her. At that time, she would roll up her things and jump off the bridge. Such behavior would often put a lot of pressure on the people around her. It seems that after several such experiences, even the urban management officials rarely come here anymore. This kind of behavior is shocking. Do not miss passing through. Take a look and take a look. Leipzig, who is wearing a peaked cap and whose appearance is difficult to see clearly in the light of the bridge lights, is waving. However, her business is not very good. Occasionally, adults will come with children, or a couple will squat in front of the stall, shopping in low voices. Whenever this happens, Leipzig will point to the product the other party wants to buy, and then show a firm expression, just like now. At this time, she said, "You still have good taste. This crystal necklace matches your girlfriend. Your girlfriend is beautiful, and the crystal necklace is also beautiful. The crystal necklace is of course a glass necklace. Although you can't see anything at night, you can see the impurities during the day. As for publicity, no matter whether they are male or female, tall or short, fat or thin, they all match. It is said that ship girls do not like to tell lies, but at this time it is not a lie at all, at most it is a compliment, and she did not really sell the glass for the price of crystal. These things are fake and everyone knows it." A pair of men squatted in front of her stall, picking up a bracelet for a long time and trying to negotiate the price. Leipzig said quickly, "No bargaining, no bargaining, this is almost sold to you at a loss." After hesitating for a moment, the two customers whispered and finally agreed. Leipzig stretched out his hand to ask the other party to hand the necklace to him, and said, "Okay, I'll wrap it up for you. Have a safe journey. By the way, do you want the flowers over there? They match well." The male customer with his girlfriend looked at the gorgeous flowers on the stall. The low-quality paint on the flowers always reminded people of bad things, such as Qingming Festival. Although the man didn't want to offend the enthusiastic vendor in front of him, he thought about it and said, "This is not a real flower." "Yes, this is a flower that will never fade. Buy a flower pot, fill it with soil and insert it into it. It goes well. It is suitable whether it is a gift for a girlfriend or a flower arrangement. It is not like real flowers that will wither in a few days." Leipzig had sold real flowers before, such as roses and carnations, but these flowers were not easy to preserve. After losing money once, she never touched them again. The male customer on the other side hesitated and said, "I just came to Sichuanjiu and I don't understand." "Don't take it off. These flowers are always placed on graves in my hometown." At this moment, Leipzig always understood why these flowers were so cheap when wholesaled. She had never experienced such things as worshipping ancestors, and she did not understand some things at all. Leipzig grimaced. Time passed little by little, and there was no business today. At night, she was a little discouraged and wanted to pack her things. These days, Tirpitz has lived with his admiral, and now the entire house here belongs to himself. You can go back whenever you want at this time without worrying about being discovered. But if you really want to say it, there is no need for Gan Niang to make money on her own. Gan Niang serves the Tutelary mansion, and the Tutelary mansion is supposed to distribute everything except her husband. Unfortunately, her admiral is a pauper. Generally speaking, it is difficult for those wandering ship girls to earn resources, because no one is willing to pay scarce resources to hire mercenaries easily. But it was very easy to earn ordinary people's money. However, she had no intention of becoming a mercenary. Now that she had found the admiral, she couldn't even become a mercenary. As she was thinking this, she suddenly heard a shout coming from across the bridge. There were people gathering around there, and it seemed like there was a lot of noise. After a burst of noise, the crowd dispersed a little. There was a stall there, and the owner of the stall was a young girl, who was waving a knife to the side. Even Chuangzia will not completely eliminate the evil forces. At this time, across the street, he saw a stall surrounded by people, who seemed to be arguing about something. Looking at the backs of those people, I could tell they were members of some kind of gang. They were young guys, but I can't even remember their names. I wanted to ask myself for protection money before, but I threw him into the river several times and never showed up again. Leipzig sighed and walked to the opposite side until he reached the stall, and then said, "What are you doing, Leipzig?" Who had his hands in the pockets of his jeans and a peaked cap on his head, sounded like a hooligan. After all, his temperament is too sharp. "We didn't look for you, what are you doing here? Don't mind your own business. Don't think that we are afraid of you, it's just that you don't have much luck." Leipzig took a breath, and then punched the opponent. Of course, the power was deliberately controlled, otherwise the person would have died long ago, and the most he would do now would be vomiting bile. A beating. Then she threw all those people into the river. The river was not wide, so no one could be drowned anyway. Thanks to the young girl, and with people around him looking at him like a hero, Leipzig returned to his stall. Sure enough, there were a lot of things missing from his stall, and he angrily cursed immoral person. Then when a couple who looked like a couple came over, she quickly forced out a smile. "Welcome, do you want to see anything? The products here are the cheapest." A surprised voice came from the other side, "Leipzig." Only then did Leipzig see clearly that the two people opposite who looked like lovers knew her. Her excitement suddenly subsided, and she was still a little panicked. Admiral and Saratoga. The official wife is obviously Lexington. Why do I always see you and Saratoga together? The sister-in-law is half of the brother-in-law. Men really don't have good things. Looking for the lost ship girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 132. Sugu brought Leipzig and Basai back and discussed some things casually. Leipzig stayed here until the afternoon and then went back. Only Basai stayed here. Although Xiaozai was determined not to live in Basai, there was nothing he could do to him. In the end, he could only say shameless. In fact, Xiaozai's nightmare started from that day, and she had been keenly aware of her predicament. The guy named Basai is not only lazy and lies on the sofa every day, he also likes to let his admiral feed him, occupy Sister Lexington's lap pillow, and force himself to sleep with her at night. He is undoubtedly his biggest enemy. But in the next few days, Sugu had to go to the academy to attend classes, and he met Akagi at the academy. He talked to the other party about the affairs of the town guardhouse and just expressed his thoughts. When he heard Akagi say a lot of things, he was immediately discouraged. Although the matter of the tutelage was discussed that day, the details were still not discussed. At this time, Akagi reminded him that there were still many details to consider, so the proposal to select the tutelage was postponed. There are a lot of things about the tutelage that require a lot of information to be consulted. Although I deliberately asked my classmates for advice on some aspects, they didn't understand it very well. All in all, Sugu has been staying in the library these days, waiting until the afternoon before returning home every day. His admiral is very busy, so Xiaozai will be obedient and not disturb the admiral. But finally one afternoon, the unbearable Xiaozai made a small report to Sugu. The little girl raised her head with a righteous expression on her face and said, "That otaku girl slept on the sofa for half a day. When she woke up, she was reading comic books, short story books, and notebooks. She didn't move for the whole day. Nothing to do." Of course he was snitching in order to have his admiral punish Bazai severely. It's just that the small report didn't work. Sugu laughed on the other side. After working for a long time, he picked up Xiaozai and felt that his whole body was healed. However, the small report had other effects. Sugu knew the situation of Bazai staying at home all day long. Since Xiaozai had already made a report, he thought for a while and said, "Let's go shopping together in the evening. Let's walk outside together. She is going to Bazai too, so we can't let her stay at home." We had dinner in the evening and chatted casually for a while. "It's time to go out." Xiaozai knocked on his bowl after finishing his meal. No one answered her. "It's time to go out," Xiaozai continued to mutter. Of course, going out to play was not the main purpose. It was a good thing to make Bazai unhappy. After pushing Xiaozai several times, Sugu stood up and suggested that everyone go shopping. Bazai disagreed and did not want to go out. However, he was carried away amidst Xiaozai's booing, so Xiaozai was laughing all the way out. Watching the street scene, watching the fireworks in the park at night, watching the magic show on the roadside, not long after, we were sitting in a small shop by the river for a late-night snack. There was singing in the distance. Saratoga looked towards the direction where the singing came from and said, "Let's go take a look." However, after having supper at this time, Bazai didn't want to leave. "No, I don't want to leave unless I go home." Xiaozai and fireflies were playing around and watching the fish in the river. As soon as she went out and was so happy, she forgot all about fighting with Bazai. "I don't want to go, I'm a little tired." Hearing Xiaozai's tone, Sugu thought to himself that this little girl would really become Bazai when she grew up. "I really wanted to go to Lexington, but York City was unreliable, so the burden of taking care of everyone fell on her." The last person to follow Saratoga was Sugu. Saratoga, who always had a stern face in front of outsiders, was a happy girl in front of familiar people. Besides liking to make her sister take the blame for bad things, her favorite thing was having an affair with her brother-in-law. However, let's not investigate whether she likes the sense of immorality. If we really sum it up, we can probably see that the things Saratoga likes must be related to her sister Lexington, except of course the cheating bath. Everyone was originally sitting in a small shop by the river bank. We walked along the river bank to Yangqiao. We walked through the bridge hole and walked up the embankment to the bridge deck. People were coming and going on the bridge deck, including classmates, friends, parents, children, and lovers. At this time, Sugu and Saratoga are like lovers. The sounds of drums and guitars came from the side, a slightly hoarse and sad sound. These were people who traveled around for their music dreams. If they felt good, they could probably throw money into the guitar boxes they opened. Saratoga is a little interested in music, but she remembers that the people in the townhouse who like music the most are the sisters Alaska and Guam. The music of those two sisters is much better than the music here. At this time, there was a couple singing by the bridge, and Saratoga threw a coin. Then amidst the noise, Saratoga sat on the railing by the bridge and whispered, "They look very good. Brother-in-law, with the governor's house, I will choose the room next to you. Brother-in-law, to be mine is the room good." There are always pitfalls waiting for him in his sister-in-law's words. Consultant Su asked, "Why?" "In that case, we can make a big hole in the wall so people can pass through, and I can have an affair with you at night." Saratoga sat on the railing and swung her legs. "If someone finds out, we will run out. Wandering, just like those singers. There is no need to say such things as having an affair. Girl, do you know how to be ashamed?" Sugu said, "I don't want to be homeless. If you don't want to wander, we have to be careful. So if my sister suddenly knocks on the door when we are having an affair at night, I will hide under the bed." "Since you want to hide under the bed, why did you dig a hole? Isn't the purpose of digging a hole just to make it easier to escape when someone catches an adulterer?" "No, no, why he had an affair with Saratoga is completely nonsense. This is really a person who was brought into the rhythm by the other party without paying attention." Sugu had no interest in talking to Saratoga, who was already in an excited mood, but Saratoga was particularly energetic. She was shaking her legs and looking around, tapping her fingers on the stone surface of the railing. "In the room, my sister was talking to you, and I hid under the bed and listened to you saying some very intimate words above me. My sister must have wanted to do something with you, but I accidentally bumped my head against the bedboard while listening below. My sister was startled and squatted down to look under the bed, and then she saw me." "Saw you? Didn't you just get caught?" Saratoga thought thoughtfully, "Yes, it would be meaningless if I caught you. That means I was hiding on your bed, you covered me with a quilt, and you pressed me under you to prevent my sister from finding out. Just like how you held me down before." Sugu said, "Don't say such misleading things. I have never pressed you down. Besides, why do you like this kind of thing when you are a grown-up girl? It was already stressful, and you were the one who gave me the ring. Or maybe you want to go back on your word now and give me away." "I would definitely not give it away. No one can take away what belongs to me." Saratoga continued, "I was pressed on by you, and my sister was standing outside talking to you. She asked you why the quilt was bulging, and you said that it was a little uncomfortable, so you bent your feet. My sister must have. I'm very confused and want to see what's going on under the quilt, so if you just say you're not wearing any clothes, my sister will definitely not open the quilt casually." Saratoga continued, "I hide in your quilt and write on your back, or I lick your back with my tongue. If you can't bear it, put your hand into the quilt and grab my hand." Sugu sighed, "How could my sister-in-law be so perverted? Otherwise, my sister will come to catch the adulterer, and I will hide outside the window." Sugu couldn't help complaining, "I don't want a room with a balcony. How can you hide outside the window?" Saratoga raised her hands and made a rock-climbing gesture and said, "That's it. Cling to the window with both hands and hang the whole body out, so that it's not easy for my sister to find out." Saratoga added, "Maybe there will be a situation where I don't wear any clothes or only wear underwear because of the affair, and then people outside look at me hanging outside and point fingers. It doesn't matter that I'm naked anyway. You are the only man in the town hall. Then they saw me. In order not to destroy the harmony of the town hall, they didn't tell my sister. Out of everyone, my sister was the only one who was kept in the dark. We the three of them were pointed at when they walked together. In order to dream about your sister, do you not even pay attention to your own image? Sugu said, if you don't want to wear clothes, it's better not to do it. Saratoga said matter-of-factly, it's just a statement, it's not true. Sugu slumped his shoulders. In the end, did he just take it seriously? Saratoga continued, otherwise you and Xiaozai. Sugu finally couldn't help it anymore. Girl, it's fine if you fantasize about your own sister, but what does it mean to fantasize about a little girl? Sugu quickly said, it doesn't matter if you talk about your sister, why do you talk about Xiaozai? Xiaozai is still a little girl. You like Xiaozai so much, you won't let it go. You're talking nonsense, don't talk nonsense. Xiaozai is still a little girl, and I'm not that perverted. I just think she's cute. Saratoga nodded with an understanding expression, but the serious look on her face made people feel uneasy. Then she heard the girl say, even a small house might grow up, but the ship girl will not grow up casually, but when she feels that she has grown up, her appearance will change. Just like Limbo and Chikia, even the little girl has grown up, and the same is true for the Z-series destroyers. Xiaozai will change when he grows up. It looks like Jinbei's house. The Z-series destroyers in the game will transform from little girls into adults after transformation. I already have Bizai. It won't be a repeat of Xiaozai becoming like that again. Then it will look like Deep Sea Bizai. That's the Deep Sea. How can you curse Xiaozai to become a Deep Sea ship girl? She just looks like a Deep Sea ship girl, but she doesn't become a Deep Sea ship girl. Okay, let's say Xiaozai will become like Shanghai Bizai, then how will she grow? I will protect her well, and it doesn't matter if she remains a little girl for the rest of her life. For example, if you die, Xiaozai feels that she can't go on like this anymore. She wants to grow up and take revenge, and then she grows up. How about this plot? If I am killed, for revenge, then she will really become Deep Sea Bizai. And don't arrange me casually. Saratoga showed an indifferent expression and said, then Bismarck is dead. Sugu said helplessly, stop talking, I know that no matter what, you are just a pervert. Saratoga didn't refute. She jumped down from the railing and hugged Sugu's arm, smiling, hee, the music doesn't sound good, and I don't want to go back now. You're so boring if you don't talk about this, and you won't tell me. Love words. Not only did you say it to your sister before, you also said it to Akagya. Sugu glanced at Saratoga who was smiling and said, illegal. Saratoga let go of Sugu's hand with a hum, turned around and looked at the river, and said, I'll betray my morality, it's super exciting anyway. Then she jumped up and glanced at the stall in the distance, showing her bright wrists, and said, buy a bracelet for me. Then, they saw Leipzig, their eyes wide open and their eyes wide open. Even so, what the hell is Leipzig looking like? You are looking for someone to catch someone. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 133. It was surprising that Leipzig set up a stall on the bridge, so consultant Su asked, why are you selling things here? The girl opened her eyes wide and panicked, what are you doing here? Looking at the stalls on the ground, Sugu asked again, do you sell trinkets? The girl had calmed down. She held her chin and said, are you having an affair? When did you start selling? You're so annoying. Finally realizing that he couldn't change the subject, Leipzig could only go crazy. On the other side, Sugu opened his mouth slightly and looked a little innocent. I'm just asking casually. To be honest, he didn't understand why Leipzig secretly worked as a hawker here. Although Leipzig kept talking about wanting a salary, she actually lived a good life. Bazi also said that her sister Bismarck would give her a lot of money every time she came back. It can be said that Fletcher is forced to work because she has 3 naughty sisters to support, and she also wants her sisters to live a better life. But Leipzig is alone and is not so short of money at all. Or do you think you have something you want to buy? No wonder you always ask yourself for a salary raise. At first, you thought it was just a casual talk, but do you really want a salary? Thinking like this, consultant Su said, Leipzig, are you short of money? What do you want to buy? Although I have no money for the time being, I will definitely find a way to satisfy any urgent needs my ship girl has. Leipzig said matter-of-factly, of course I'm short of money, so you mean the Admiral finally wants to make up for my salary? If I raise some money, I can probably get this number. Sugu stretched out his hand. Leipzig looked at Sugu's serious expression and sighed, don't be so serious. I really didn't want to ask you for a salary. You are so poor now. If I give you a salary, you won't be able to survive. I'll wait for you in the future. If you have money, give me a salary. I don't want to buy anything. Although I am satisfied that my ship girl is very reasonable, I am a little concerned about saying that I am so poor. If you don't want to buy something urgently, then why do you want to set up a stall? Leipzig leaned on the railing next to the bridge, watching the ripples of the bridge lights reflected on the river. He crossed his chest with one hand and dragged his chin with the other and said, you ask me why I want to make money, but I don't really know. Women spend the most on makeup, but because they are ship girls, it doesn't matter if they don't have cosmetics. Regardless of whether they wear cosmetics or not, their skin and complexion will look the same. Accommodation, food, and pursuits all seem to be satisfied in the Tutelary mansion. What are you doing to make money? It seems like there is nothing to do if you don't do something. After thinking for a long time, Leipzig said, of course I want to make money and exchange it for gold. Exchange it for gold, and then, of course it has to be placed in the house to be the most attractive. Just like my lucky cat, every day I put a coin in it every time I go home, as long as I put the money in, it makes sense. When Sugu heard Leipzig's idea, he thought to himself, if you want to make money in exchange for gold by setting up a stall, you are overthinking it. Don't even think about making a lot of money by setting up a stall. It's okay to make some pocket money. Recalling that he also did stall setting up in college, he said, set up a stall. Before he finished speaking, Leipzig had already said, what do you think is wrong with setting up a stall? It discriminates against setting up a stall. She originally didn't want people to know that she was doing such behavior as setting up a stall. Why are you so sensitive? Thinking of this, Sugu said, I don't mean that. I just want to say that I have also set up a stall. Hearing that her admiral had also set up a stall, Leipzig was also a little curious, and she asked, are you selling anything? I don't sell anything. Sugu thought for a moment and said, it's not like you. The kind of stall I set up is just a game of circling. The hoop game. Sugu gestured and said, how much does it cost for a circle? Then there are things like beer, coke, cigarettes, or dolls on the ground. If you get the trap, you can take it away. If the customer gets the trap, you will lose money. No, make money if you get caught. Leipzig is not someone who is easily fooled, she said, there are people who come to play with that kind of thing. If no one comes to play, then give me a big gift that everyone wants. Big gift? What makes it a big gift? A big gift can be any expensive product, such as a whole carton of cigarettes or a long-lasting expensive red wine, or a big doll. If people don't like these, they are not your target audience. Hearing Sugu's words, Saratoga, who was looking at the goods, raised his head and said, "Brother-in-law, put you far away, and then everyone will throw circles at you, and whoever gets the trap, you will stay with him that night. It's a good idea to think about it, there is indeed a market for it." "Stop talking." Sugu raised his hand and struck Saratoga on the head with a knife. "That's a good idea." Leipzig snickered, and then seeing Sugu's increasingly ugly expression, he quickly asked, "Then what is the target audience?" "Just say who are the customers you want? Elementary school students or adults, couples, or parents?" Sugu looked at the goods displayed in Leipzig and pointed at a random target. At this time, his finger hit the bouquet of flowers. He was silent for a long time, thinking that Leipzig was not someone who could be easily defeated. "For example, the kind of flowers you sell must be sold before the Qingming festival. After the Qingming festival, it will be difficult to sell them." Leipzig was expressionless. "Please don't talk about the flowers." "Okay. Speaking of target audience, if your target audience is primary school students, then of course you have to set up a stall in front of the school. The items set up in the stall are some cheap and delicious snacks or cheap toys. If the target is middle school students, then consider selling some exquisitely crafted jewelry or fashionable clothes. If you want to do business for adults, put cigarettes and beer. If you want to do business for children, put toys and dolls. If it's cute plush dolls, the target can also be girls or couples. In short, just look, it's your idea." Leipzig asked, "Will this make money?" Sugu spread his hands and said, "How can it be so easy? I only provide ideas but not guarantees." Leipzig said with a smile, "But it makes sense. It seems that the admiral can be a wealthy businessman even if he doesn't become an admiral." Sugu waved his hand to scold Fang Qiu, and said, "You have discovered my ability again. Gold will always shine. Let me just say that. This sentence is absolutely correct." Sugu's boasting made Leipzig unhappy, and she said, "Dasin, you still owe me a salary, and your wife also owes my salary." The Sugu's wife she mentioned was naturally Bizai. When someone mentioned pain, he couldn't refute it. Sugu immediately lowered his eyebrows and said, "Yes, yes, yes. You go to class every day and don't work. You just eat everyone's food. Yes, yes, yes. So many wedding ships, so many wives, unfaithful men. Yes, yes, yes. But since you have said so many things, I think it is still of some use. For now, I won't tell you about your affair behind Lexington's back." Sugu defended, "Whatever you say, we are just out for a walk." Then Sugu pointed to the distance with Leipzig's distrustful expression and said, "Lexington is over there. We went out to have supper together. She was still there with the child. Saratoga and I just came here. Take a walk. We're going back soon, so let's go there together and eat whatever you want." Leipzig looked at Sugu blinking his eyes, looking a little excited. She squatted on the ground and wrapped up all the goods with her hands. She stopped doing business. Of course, her favorite was late-night snacks. Then she hesitated a little, wondering if she could just rush over there. But she only thought about it for a second, thinking why bother with so much, freeloading is the best thing. "I love you so much." As she said this, she blew a kiss to Sugu. Saratoga looked at Sugu. At the same time, Sugu looked at Saratoga, and said angrily at the strange look directed at him, "Let's go back quickly. Don't you be afraid that Leipzig will say nonsense." Saratoga laughed and said, "We are grasshoppers on a rope now." Leipzig was walking in front. When he saw Su and Gu walking slowly, he waved and said, "Bizai is here. Speaking of which, I really have something to do with Bizai. Looking for the lost ship girl." Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 134. Sugu originally wore the military uniform of a new admiral when he was attending classes at the academy, but now he didn't change into casual clothes when he went out at night. Although it is a bit unsightly, wearing such a military uniform and matching it with a bright and beautiful girl around you can at least save you a lot of trouble in Chuangziu. After all, Chuangziu is a city that was developed to train admirals. Ship girls are everything here. Protecting the safety of the route is necessary. No one is stupid enough to cause trouble for an admiral. The night market in Chuangziu is very good. Even at night, the city center is basically brightly lit. After all, this city has a large number of wealthy people. As the protagonists of the city, the admiral and the ship girl are not poor. Of course, people like Sugu are special cases, but as long as they own the garrison, they will soon be rich. There are many shops along the streets. They set up shelves on the river, then laid wooden floors, put tables and chairs, and turned it into a small restaurant with characteristics. In summer, you can sell cold drinks such as ice cream, and in winter, barbecue is of course indispensable. After shopping in the evening, I was ready to have a late-night snack, so I chose a small restaurant with such characteristics on the river, a small restaurant on the river. After ordering something casually and eating almost everything, Sugu and Saratoga went to listen to music. At this time, York City was looking around at the dinner table. Bizai really had nothing to say, and she always looked lazy even when she went out. She was lying on the table. Lexington, the only serious person among these people, has too many things to take care of. Fireflies, don't get too close to the river and don't play in the water. Xiaozai, you can't touch Beizai's head. If you continue to be naughty, she will catch you again. As his admiral left, within a short period of time, there was someone else who wanted to strike up a conversation. So Lexington had to smile apologetically at those people again. I'm married, the two of them are also married, so it's useless for you to strike up a conversation. Not prepared to say too much, Lexington spoke straightforwardly. She also held a helpless smile amidst the other party's awkward smile. In fact, she also knew that no one would believe such a reason. Sitting at the table and taking a sip of juice, she saw half of the snacks placed on the table and said, Xiaozai, do you still want to eat your food? At this time, Xiaozai, who was lying on the railing with Firefly, looked over and saw that he had only eaten half of the bread he ordered on the dining table. I want to eat. Then she picked up her bread, took 2 steps and said, give it to the fish. The fish on the river always gather at the river because of the nearby restaurants. After all, there are many people feeding them. Not long after this, Lexington saw Sugu return. She asked, what did you watch? How was the music? We didn't watch anything, the music was okay, but we met Leipzig. Then Leipzig, who was following Sugu and carrying a large package, came over and raised his hand to say hello. What a coincidence. Leipzig laughed dryly, it was hard to say that he was setting up a stall here. She nodded and said, it's quite a coincidence. Sugu said, you just came to Leipzig. We have almost eaten. You can order something yourself. Leipzig is not the kind of girl to be polite. This. Pointing at the menu, he ordered all the things he usually couldn't bear to eat. Sitting at the table, Lexington held his cheek and asked, how did you meet? Leipzig quickly replied, I went out to play, and then I happened to meet him. Did you come out to play with so many things? What is it? Lexington noticed Leipzig's package. It's nothing, Leipzig waved her hands quickly, and then she picked up a bunch of chicken wings from the dining table. They were leftovers, and she didn't care. At this time, he quickly changed the topic, why do you think of going out for supper? After hearing the conversation on the other side, Xiaozai slowly turned his head and said word by word, it's to teach someone a lesson. Leipzig looked around and said, didn't Fletcher and the others come? In the morning, I heard Sixby say that Fletcher was going to take them to her colleague's house, and he didn't bother to call them at night. While talking like this, the store brought the things Leipzig ordered. She rubbed her hands and said, "This store is quite expensive." Sugu replied, "Fortunately, there will be a guardhouse soon anyway, so I don't have to worry about money." Leipzig chewed the food in his mouth and said, "I don't know when there will be a garrison." Then she saw Bizai, who looked listless, and asked, "Bizai, is he still like that?" Lexington also sighed and nodded. She had nothing to do with Tirpitz. After all, she was not Bizai's biological sister. Sugu said, "You don't have something to do with Bizai, what do you mean?" Leipzig was eating, making strange noises, and then he probably choked, and hurriedly patted his chest. Sugu wanted to hand over the water, but Leipzig waved his hand to say no, and took a breath and said, "Don't worry, do you think she can listen to her now?" Sugu followed Leipzig's gaze and glanced at Bazai, who was lying on the table, and nodded. Leipzig added, "The new ship girl who is admiral is called York City. She is now walking next to the North House. Are they familiar with each other?" Bazai was the least energetic of everyone. She didn't want to go out originally, but everyone went out together, so she was called anyway. At this time, she was sitting on a wicker chair and lying on the clean table with a weak look, holding a book in her hand. At this time, no one could clearly see what she was reading in the poor surrounding light, and some passers-by even had a favorable impression of her persistence in reading at night. However, it is unclear to outsiders, but to everyone, they clearly understand what Bazai is looking at, so they can only give a hopeless evaluation. Bazai is a homebody with a good temper. She is lying on the table and is not angry even if Xiaozai touches her head like a prank. She is holding her notebook and looking at herself. Sitting not far from Bazai, York City looked around aimlessly, hesitated, gritted his teeth and made up his mind, and finally his eyes fell on Bazai thoughtfully. She had heard that Bazai, also called Tirpitz, was a very powerful battleship, but the strength of the ship's equipment never determined the outcome of battleships. She had also heard that Tirpitz's air defense capability was very weak. In history, the battleship Tirpitz was sunk by a tallboy bomb. And since he is an aircraft carrier, there is no need to worry at all when facing Tirpitz. After these few days of contact, she also knew that the other party was a harmless guy, but he usually lacked a little self-consciousness. "I have been sleeping all day, and because I have been here these days, even the admiral was forced to sleep on the sofa and give up his room. Because they have always faced seniors, whether Lexington, Saratoga, or Akagi, at this time York City wants a younger sister and junior no matter what. Although she also has a younger sister, Firefly calls her sister, but as a little girl, it's boring." She pursed her lips and made up her mind that she wanted Bazai to call her sister. Among all the people, this weak girl was probably the only one who seemed easier to deal with. "So if you want Bazai to call you sister, you must first get close to her. It's just that I haven't had much communication with Bazai these days, and I'm not a very familiar person. I want to talk but suddenly don't know what to do." At this time, the light bulb hanging under the tree by the river was shining on the table. The wind suddenly blew, and the light bulb hanging under the tree swayed, and the light also swayed. York Chen watched Bazai move towards the other party, wanting to strike up a conversation. She didn't know how to start a conversation. She gnawed another piece of roasted corn and made up her mind to say to Bazai, "What are you looking at? It looks very interesting." Of course she knew what the book was, but she also thought that she had learned a lot from her admiral about the ability to tell lies. Now was the time to strike up a conversation. Bazai became excited when he heard someone talking to him on the other side, who seemed to be interested in the book. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 135. Reading notebooks has never been supported. Both my sister and the admiral think it is a bad thing. What's more, my sister will tear up the notebooks she has worked so hard to save. If something doesn't go his way, my sister will hit someone, such as hitting herself on the head with a notebook. He's not very smart to begin with, but his head is about to be damaged if he's beaten again. What if he turns out to be like Quincy? Everyone has always disliked reading books by themselves, but now there was finally someone talking to him because of the book, and Baizai was very pleased. At this time, she quickly handed the book in her hand to York City. On the other hand, York City looked at the pictures in the book and suddenly felt a little difficult, but the other party's enthusiasm made it impossible to refuse. Then Baizai asked, "What do you think? Isn't it great?" York City Kikai said, "Actually, that is not bad." Baizai pointed to another place in the book. "What about this one? This picture is very classic." "Good." York City was casually perfunctory. At the same time, she raised her head and noticed that everyone was looking at her. At this time, she and Baizai were sitting side by side and evaluating the book. They seemed like-minded. Especially when I saw the "I understand" expression in my admiral's eyes, I really wanted to express my grievances. Although he wanted to get closer to Baizai, York City didn't want to misunderstand him when discussing the book with Baizai, so he wanted to change the subject. "Xiao Zai and the others are feeding fish, and I don't know what kind of fish they are feeding." Answer quickly, any carp, grass carp, or crucian carp is fine. Then everyone put down their notebooks and get closer through pleasant chats. However, Baizai was not interested at all and did not answer the call. She asked, "York City, do you think this person is well drawn? Is the hand placed here appropriate? Is the too big? This is at 8 pounds. Can't be 8 pounds, right? Even a ship girl can't be 8 pounds. However, York City has become very smart at this time, and she will never complain." At this time, she remembered that Baizai was also the wedding ship of her admiral. Since it was a wedding ship, there was always something to care about. She looked at Sugu, who was talking to Sister Lexington at this time, and whispered, "Did you know? The admiral once called Sister Lexington wife, but then stopped. And, I don't know why, the admiral and Saratoga always behaved very coldly in front of Lexington, but when Sister Lexington was not around, the two of them seemed very close. There must be something weird about it. Since you are the admiral's wedding ship, you should always pay attention to this topic. Can everyone please stop talking about the book?" Baizai still didn't get distracted. She said, "I bought a model before, but I always didn't draw well when I drew a book based on the model. The admiral said that the books I drew were not realistic because if I touched the asterisk, the fingers should be sunk into the flesh. Do you think this is true?" Perverted admiral, actually talking about with a girl. Baizai continued, "I noticed that the admiral sometimes stared at my buttocks and felt a little shy. I told him that if he wanted to touch it, he could touch it, and then he said no and walked away. In fact, he was definitely, you want to touch it, right? How about I draw this thing in the notebook?" After hearing this, York City can actually understand that it is quite difficult for his admiral, a strong-blooded man, to endure until now. But even if she could understand it, she still felt that her admiral was abnormal. Thinking of this, York City suddenly thought of a good topic, and she said, "Actually, the admiral is also very perverted. I saw him staring at Saratoga's back a few times." "Then that's it, York City." La said Chase, "Of course, only she knows how much of it is false news." However, Baizai still did not change the subject. She said, "I will take you to buy a book together one day. After buying the book, we will become best friends." York City thought for a moment and said, "The little house is Tirpitz, and you are also Tirpitz. What is your relationship?" "I only read my sister Bismarck's books. I am very loyal." York City straightened his bangs and continued, Firefly always talks about magic and magic. Does she know magic? Actually, the book doesn't look good without clothes, but it looks good with clothes on. Fletcher is obviously just a destroyer, but he looks like an adult. Will he be eaten by the Admiral? I drew a book about the Admiral and my sister before, but I didn't get beaten by my sister that time. How much do you think Akage can eat? She invites me to dinner every time I meet her. How about a book drawing Akage? York City continued, what happened to the Hornets in the former garrison? Hearing this, Beizai looked pitiful and said, I know you hate books. Although I like them, I actually know that everyone hates them. You think so too, and you have changed the subject after talking to you so much. When York City heard Turpit's weak voice, she quickly said, it's nothing, I like the book or something. After saying this, she wanted to slap herself in the face. Oh, then I'll continue talking. Just like this, York City and Beizai were talking, and she almost collapsed. In the end, she finally decided to get straight to the point. She asked with a serious face, how was your fight? Are you good? Fighting is too troublesome. I don't like it. I like to go back to my room and sleep. You must be awesome, right? Beizai is a very humble girl, and she always speaks in a soft voice. At this time, she said, actually, it's not bad, it's not very bad. Can I see your ship uniform? Hey, do you want to see my suit? No, the Admiral told me that I can't unfold the suit outside casually, and unfolding the suit is very troublesome. Trouble, trouble, trouble. During the conversation with Beizai, the word trouble was what York City heard the most. By now, she has become very immune to this word. Show me the ship's attire, and well, let's do it this way. You and I will have a practice session, and if you win, I will read the notebook with you. I heard the Admiral say, don't you also draw notebooks? Or I will be a model for you. If you lose, just call me sister. By getting closer, you can also practice and recognize a sister. You can accomplish multiple things with one stone. York City almost wants to praise his own wisdom. Beizai didn't care about this, whether it was an exercise or calling her sister, she cared that she would finally find someone who recognized her, so she agreed with a feeling of relief. York City said, then it's agreed, then you can open your ship's uniform and show it to me. Since you said so, it doesn't matter if you take a look. Beizai said this. In fact, she didn't like unfolding her ship's uniform because the Admiral always laughed at her that her ship's uniform looked like grilled quail, but there was no other way now. Beizai rarely moved away from the table where she had been lying for a long time, and then stood in a wide place. A burst of air twisted, and the silver-white ship uniform spread out behind her. To be honest, York City was a little stunned when he saw Beizai's ship uniform. The other party's equipment was so dazzling that it was terrifying. She is also someone who has seen all kinds of equipment in class. Generally speaking, the ship equipment that the ship girl comes with is not very powerful, so it is often the case that the ship girl's ship equipment is paired with new equipment. York City asked, what kind of ship attire do you have? Tirpitz looked at his ship's equipment and whispered, well, what I am equipped with is the American triple 16-inch gun, which everyone calls Mk6, and it is equipped with Type 91 armor-piercing projectiles. In fact, this equipment is not bad, and not very strong. York City was silent for a moment and asked, if you are a model in a book, will you be given clothes to wear? Also, even if you agree to read the book together, can you only read one book a day? On the other side, Leipzig almost finished the late-night snack he ordered, and saw that the conversation between Beizai and York City had ended. At this time, the night was getting darker and there were some things that she couldn't bear to explain. She knocked on the table and said to Beizai, who was lying on the table, do you know what the date is today? How? Leipzig sighed and said, on the 24th, Your sister Bismarck should be back before the end of the month. Don't you need to prepare? Don't worry, there are still many days since we are all home girls, it doesn't matter if we have one more procrastination problem. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De-rong Yan. Chapter 136. When will your sister come back? Sugu drank soy milk and looked at Bizai. Yesterday, Leipzig announced the news that Bismarck was coming back. Although there is no convenient communication like a mobile phone here, there are some things that can be judged by experience. Bismarck would come back at regular intervals, which was agreed at the beginning to avoid Bizai's worries. Estimated at the end of the month. Didn't Leipzig tell you to do something? There are still a few days, don't be in a hurry. I'm lazy at home, and procrastination is obviously one of them. After finishing his breakfast, Sugu put on his shoes, glanced at the sleepy Bizai, and said, I don't care about you, I have important things to do at the college today. Yeah, go ahead. Bizai was eating breakfast in his pajamas. He didn't change into pajamas because he had to go to bed later. Before going out, Sugu said to Lexington, then I will go to Akage today, and the requirements of the garrison are settled. Lexington sat demurely, tearing up the dough sticks and putting them into his mouth, and said, go ahead. After the details of the tutelage have been discussed over and over again in the past few days, the rest is to choose the most suitable tutelage among the options available. We can't put off choosing the garrison any longer. We have prepared enough information these days. Regarding the matter of finding Akage to discuss establishing a garrison, Sugu had actually thought of the final outcome from the beginning, and as expected, the last person to negotiate with him was Zeppelin. Sometimes I think about Zeppelin, it's really hard, having such an unreliable senior. Of course I don't know if Zeppelin is happy with it. At this time, in the college's office, Sugu was negotiating with Chi Bolin. On the other side, Shi Kung was sitting next to him, drinking tea and eating snacks. He seemed to be leisurely and contented. He still maintains such a temperament in the serious office. He had to. It is said that Akage is quite capable. Sugu was sitting on the sofa in the corner of the office. There was a coffee table in front of the sofa, and various documents were placed on the coffee table. At this time, he was flipping through a large pile of information that Zeppelin had brought out. These information were all files of the garrison offices in various places. What he needs to do now is to judge the information he needs from a large number of files. The first thing he needs to know is the area and layout. These can be judged from the drawings of the town hall. Then there are the geographical location and customs, which require prior preparation and your own understanding of the local features of the world. Among them, Sugu did not need to pay too much attention to the information that was very important to most admirals and the strength of the deep-sea warships appearing in the surrounding waters. After all, his fleet was super powerful. Sugu was flipping through the pages without saying a word. Behind the desk, Zeppelin's long black stocking legs were crossed together. The long legs swayed and swayed, making people easily distracted, but she didn't feel anything. She stretched out her hand to lift her white hair and held a hand. Information. Zeppelin said, how about this garrison? It was built next to a county town, but because the admiral recently built a battleship, it was transferred to another garrison. The waters near the newly arrived garrison are more dangerous, but there he is. He fought for his hometown, and even the town's townhouse was funded by the local people, so we didn't force it. So now the townhouse is empty. Sugu had already read the file, and looked at it very carefully, so he didn't miss any subtle information. He said, I don't want to go there because the local interpersonal relationships are too complicated, with multi-ethnic integration and strong folk customs. I have read the Admiral's report and found that the number of attacks was very few, and most of the time they were arguing with villagers from various places. It was just a cannonball that accidentally hit a vegetable field. No one was hurt, so it was enough to compensate according to the standard. However, the villagers blocked the town hall and demanded money, a lot of money. Because they did not make a living by fishing, the folk customs are fierce and the local government can't do anything to them. To be honest, this is the thing that bothers me the most. Zeppelin then fiddled with another file. In fact, she was not familiar with these files. All these things were prepared by others. She said, "What about this townhouse? It's a pity to say it. The townhouse suffered a retaliatory attack, and more than half of the entire townhouse was destroyed. Although everyone was fine, the admiral seemed a little frustrated. Later he resigned as admiral. The townhouse was rebuilt after the war, and now it is a townhouse without an owner." Sugu took the file from Zeppelin's hand, looked at it for a while, and said, "This is not good, the deep-sea ship girl appears too frequently. I'm not saying that it can't be suppressed, but it will be troublesome if it appears too frequently. I don't want everyone to suddenly hear it while eating. When the siren sounds, you have to rush to attack." "Whether this works or not," Zeppelin said, "then what conditions do you have? I'll help you sort them out." Sugu thought for a while and said, "This is just my current thinking, for the time being. Relatively speaking, I hope that my garrison will not be too close to the city. If it is too close to the city, there will be a lot of troubles. It is best not to have villages and farmland around it. If there are drills, accidents may occur. It's better not to go too far south or too close to the equator. It's too hot. It's okay to be colder, but it's best not to have southerly days. Of course, frequent earthquakes are absolutely not allowed. It's best not to have special parasites or venomous snakes in the area. Insects, it doesn't matter if there are wild beasts, even wild beasts like Komodo dragons, but insects are the most annoying. And. After talking about something one after another, Sugu finally stopped. Chibolin sighed and said, "You still have so many demands." Sugu laughed and explained that after all, it was a big matter that could not be taken casually. He said, "It's okay to be close. These are not necessary conditions. Everything can be discussed. And if you build a townhouse, we will help you guard a sea area. As long as you don't show up. A powerful deep-sea flagship, such as a powerful warship like the deep-sea Tirpitz, there is absolutely no problem with anything else, no matter what kind of enemy it is." Zeppelin rolled his eyes at Sugu and said, "There is only one deep-sea Tirpitz in the whole world, and you can't even see him if you want to." While eating snacks, Akage chuckled after hearing such a conversation. The reason for such laughter was of course Zeppelin's taunting. Zeppelin didn't know it, but she knew that everyone in the garrison directly suppressed deep-sea Tirpitz. Now that I think about it, I felt like I was driving like no other at that time. Then when everyone looked over at him, Akage blushed and smiled, hoping that everyone would just pretend that nothing happened. Gradually, from the morning, he started to look through the files one by one, and until the afternoon, Sugu finally found a similar one, but the layout was a little dissatisfied. He asked, "This one is good, but it is still a little worse. Can it be renovated? Add some buildings and greening." "Okay, but what kind of structure do you want? Some requirements always need to be met. The whole world has a tolerant attitude towards the admirals and ship girls who help suppress the deep-sea ship girls. As for the layout, I will give you the drawings. Of course, I don't guarantee that the sizes will be standard. My requirements are not high. I just need most of them to meet the requirements." Zeppelin smiled and said, "Drawings. Are you sure everyone can understand what you draw?" "It should be okay." Sugu hesitated for a moment, wondering if the standards here were the same as what he knew. "If it's not right, I will discuss it with your engineer alone. Just assume that you will get better, but I don't see that you still have a chance. Sugu smiled and said, "It's okay. That's probably it." Sugu knew more things when he was with Admiral Chen Nan, such as how to operate and manage the garrison. But those are the follow-up matters, and there is no need to say more at this time. Zeppelin tapped the table and asked, "When do you want it?" "It's best to be years ago. Counting from now on, there is still a long time." "Okay, that's it. You can bring the drawings to me within a week. But if it's not too much, we have a professional team. I promise you can move in before the year." Soon after bidding farewell to Chi Bolin and walking with Akage for a while, Sugu returned to his residence alone. Then he heard Bizai's faint voice. She probably finally realized the importance of the matter. She said, "In a few days, my sister will really come back. We can't go on like this. Admiral, you must help me." Sugu put down the tangerines he bought on the way home in the living room and asked, "She'll be back soon?" "That's great. Don't you know what she's doing now?" Probably fighting. As he said this, Bizai's thoughts began to spread. Looking for the lost ship girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 137. As Bizai thought, what was Bismarck doing as a mercenary? Being a mercenary is nothing more than fighting for your employer. At this time, Bismarck, who had short silver-gray hair on the sea, was leading the way, and his entire body of ship equipment had been opened before moving forward. The sailing feet hit the surface and began to push forward. The deep-sea ship girl who was originally shelling turned around, and an incomprehensible voice came out of the deep-sea destroyer's mouth, "Gilu Gilu" and "Kara Kara," and then gunfire sprayed out from her fish-shaped ship suit. Bismarck was sailing, enemy fire fell on her sides, water rose, and a shell exploded at her feet. The enemy was attacking, but Bismarck did not want to respond with artillery fire. Navigation requires fuel, and bombardment requires ammunition. Sometimes the big bullies the small. Melee combat is a good offensive method to save resources. You can roughly imagine that the battleship is ramming towards the destroyer, and you only need to let out a roar of "crush them" to smash the destroyer into two pieces without having to pay too much. At this time, Bismarck raised his hand, clenched his fist, and faced him head-on. Her punch was the first to hit the enemy's ship. The enemy's ship was very large. The huge fish-shaped ship was almost the same height as Bismarck's ship. Under normal circumstances, Bismarck's soft-looking fist hit hard steel. There is obviously no way to cause any harm except to break his own bones. However, after all, the ship girl looks soft, and if you look down on it, you will suffer a big blow. Deficit. The fist hit the enemy's black ship with astonishing momentum. There was no shocking loud noise. However, as Bismarck retracted his fist, a crack suddenly appeared on the opponent's ship. One punch knocked back the enemy, who was about the same height as herself, and then she punched again. At this time, even though the enemy's hard armor was extremely tough, spiderweb-like cracks appeared under such a punch. The enemy struggled like a fish, but the power of destroyers and battleships was originally very different, and this was not reflected in their size. At this time, Bismarck pressed one hand on the opponent's ship, and held the opponent's gun barrel with the other hand. Using force with his arm, the enemy's gun barrel began to deform slightly, and then the gun barrel was broken off. Seeing that the enemy had no ability to resist, Bismarck reached into the mouth of the enemy's fish-shaped ship suit with one hand and grasped the steel with intertwined canines. No matter how the enemy struggled, her other hand grabbed her eyes. The bound girl pulled the other party out forcefully. Hiss. At this moment, the girl she held in her hand made an incomprehensible sound. Bismarck frowned slightly, picked up the opponent's ship's uniform with his other hand and threw it at the local girl's face. The deep-sea destroyer immediately flew a few meters away, and then began to sink. This series of actions made Bismarck a little colder. Seeing the enemy being wiped out by him, Bismarck twisted his neck and shoulders, and then a blue-haired girl moved to her side. "Sister Bismarck, you win." "Yes, Prince Eugen, get ready and move on." Bismarck took Prince Eugen and set off towards deeper seas. At this time, there were several other ship girls behind them. They were fighting with them and the ship girls from the garrison who hired them. The battle cruiser Alaska was one of them. At this time, she looked at the woman with short silver-gray hair standing on the sea in the distance, thinking that the battle was over before it even started, and there was no room for her to play. She ran her fingers through her long hair that was blown by the sea breeze, and said coldly, "She is just a wandering mercenary. Why would the admiral believe her? Besides, fighting is too barbaric." This operation to suppress the deep-sea ship girls was quite dangerous. For this reason, her admiral spent a lot of money to hire a wandering ship girl as a mercenary. Although he was very capable, she just disdained him. At this time her companion moved to her side and said, "She is Bismarck, a very powerful battleship." Alaska smiled contemptuously, "It's just Bismarck, so it may not be that powerful. How many times has she attacked and practiced? Maybe it's just that she was defeated on the outside, relying on her good luck, relying on her battleship's body to bully Shanghai. It's just a destroyer. If we encounter a deep-sea battleship, fighting at close range is an act of seeking death. What we have to do is to rely on powerful firepower to defeat the enemy from a distance." At this time, her companion said somewhat innocently, "I have also seen her bombardment. It turned out that it was used when destroying the deep-sea heavy cruiser." Alaska said with a straight face, "Is it great?" As if she noticed something strange, the girl quickly said, "Still not as powerful as Sister Alaska." Alaska didn't have a good look on Bismarck, but for her companion, who was also a junior, she was someone worth relying on. She put her hand on the other man's head, smiled and said, "Little flatterer. Okay, let's catch up quickly, but we can't let her steal the show." Black spots appeared on the sea in the distance, and then the distance became closer, and increasingly larger figures could be seen on the sea. The first step in the battle is of course to find the enemy. Relying on effectively judging the enemy's speed and position before attacking, this will significantly improve the accuracy of the artillery strike. The destroyer girl who was leading the way had the radar above her head rotating and making a sound that ordinary people couldn't hear. Then she stretched out her hands to cover her ears to receive the information coming back from the radar. Then the turret mounted on the ship adjusted its angle little by little according to the feedback from the radar. On the other side, another light cruiser gently spread his hand. A small plane was lying in his hand. The small green plane was a zero-water reconnaissance plane. It was borrowed by his admiral from others earlier. Ship equipment. The girl raised her hands in the sea breeze. Facing the sea breeze, the reconnaissance plane trembled slightly and then flew up unsteadily in the wind. The reconnaissance plane circled into the sky on the wind and then flew in the sky like a dragonfly. Then she covered her ears with her palms and listened to the message coming from the reconnaissance plane. She quickly raised her right hand and shouted, "Southeast." Just like that, the battle cry began to sound. Bismarck charged towards the enemy, and the enemy on the other side also discovered this side. Then one after another carrier-based aircraft rushed towards her. So she retracted her originally spread hands slightly, and the small machine guns located on the waist armor and the most side armor were exposed, and then the gun barrels sprayed out tongues of flame and flew towards the hovering enemy carrier-based aircraft. But fleet battles never rely on one person. Someone on the other side shouted, "Kong Yan, go help her." Bismarck was not very good at emptying, and all the ammunition flew into the distant sky with just one rotation in front of the carrier-based aircraft. At this time, it would be best to have destroyers come to help her with air defense. Destroyers are not the main force in attacking the enemy but serve as auxiliary ones. Visual, radar, and various information were fed back. The fort behind Bismarck adjusted its position and then blasted out. Only the water column rose, and Bismarck sighed. Unfortunately, the enemy ran far away. The artillery bombardment did not have a high hit rate, so it didn't matter if one hit failed. Then one after another orders came from Bismarck's mouth: catch up. Pay attention to dodge. 6 o'clock. The angle of elevation is 30 degrees. Prepare for bombardment. 1, 2, 3, launch. Straddle shot. Dodge. I will protect Sister Bismarck. Prince Eugen blocked Bismarck. She originally existed as a frigate. The enemy's artillery bombardment exploded water jets around Bismarck. Although there was no hit at this time, if no measures are taken, it will only hit sooner or later. Bismarck sailed towards the opponent in the face of the artillery fire, his black over-the-knee boots plop-pap-pap stepping on the sea as if on flat ground. Then as the speed continued to increase, he changed from running to gliding. When the speed reached the highest level, Bismarck rode behind him. There were several waves. Bismarck moved forward in a Z pattern on the sea, accelerating, decelerating, turning and accelerating again, and the navigation path was tortuous. Alaska, be careful to dodge. Don't turn around, look ahead. Nonsense, I know, Alaska yelled at Bismarck. She originally disliked Bismarck, but now she looked back and was suddenly a little surprised. Large caliber artillery, seemingly small carrier-based aircraft. At this moment, the enemy's firepower poured in like locusts, heavy rain and strong winds. The ammunition hit her shoulder and a large ball of flames and smoke rose up. Before she could think too much, the enemy's ammunition poured out and hit her continuously. Tens of seconds later, the smoke rising from the sea was still filled with smoke. Sister Alaska, someone shouted. A gust of wind blew by, and the smoke that filled the sea gradually dissipated. As the smoke gradually faded in the wind, a figure covering his head with both hands appeared in the smoke, but Alaska had already broken through. Bismarck approached and said, I told you before, pay attention, are you a soldier? Follow orders. Even though Alaska was hurt and broken, her voice was not comforting. Then she said again, back off. No, I can still fight. Perhaps his stubbornness was at work, Alaska shouted loudly. Get out of the way, get out of the way. Alaska looked towards the sky. The carrier-based aircraft that attacked at the beginning had been eliminated, and the gunfire was dodged or resisted. However, there was still a ball of fire in the sky at this time. It was the gunfire of the battleship. It has become inevitable. I said dodge. At this time, Alaska saw a black figure blocking her face, and then fire appeared on her body. Dodge, dodge, why don't you listen? Alaska was suddenly in a daze. It was Bismarck who saved him. It was the Bismarck he had always ridiculed. The wind became stronger and stronger, and the smoke was blown away by the sea breeze. Then Alaska saw clearly what Bismarck looked like at this time. Bismarck's handsome and pretty face was blackened several times by the gunfire, his black clothes were burned with countless holes, and a pair of sleeves completely disappeared, revealing a pair of arms. Thanks were not spoken, and Alaska remained silent. This can't be done, it can't be like this. The person you mocked becomes your savior. At this time, she retreated little by little towards the rear. She was already injured. This suppression mission looked extremely dangerous. It was originally guessed that there would be 3 deep-sea battleship levels in this suppression mission. It was indeed guessed correctly. This time the enemy had at least deep-sea battleships or cruisers, and even aircraft carriers and light carriers. In the past, several garrison forts would form a joint fleet for such a task, but this time none of the surrounding garrison forts sent a fleet, but I couldn't wait any longer and thought I didn't need help. Indeed, such a dangerous mission can easily lead to sinking if not careful. Many things need to be communicated, and we cannot attack hastily. If you send out a powerful fleet, how do you calculate supplies? If injured, who will come out with the steel? These matters cannot be communicated clearly with a phone call or a telegram, and there is nothing we can do if we delay in taking action. At first, he was eager to attack and took the initiative to ask for help from his admiral. Perhaps it was because he did not want to lose to Bismarck. It's just that Bismarck was still the flagship of this attack, and the opponent didn't seem to care at all about his challenge. Do you look down on yourself? His usually peaceful mood should not have led to such an angry situation. Sure enough, she couldn't see the close relationship between her admiral and the other party. The little girl who had just become the admiral always admired her elder sister. It used to be towards herself, but suddenly the object of admiration became Bismarck, who was obviously just a mercenary who got paid to do things. That's all. Although I kept telling myself that I couldn't be so jealous, and that if my resentment was too deep, I might turn into a deep-sea ship girl, I couldn't bear it at all. It almost sunk today, if Bismarck hadn't stood in front of him. It's really inappropriate for the other party to treat me like this, but I look down on others, and it's really hateful. Her course is on the sea, her long pink hair is messy. It would indeed be unscientific for outsiders to see girls acting on the sea, but they are the products of ship girls and are inherently unscientific. Already too broken to fight and ready to leave, Alaska whispered, "Thank you." The sea breeze messed up Bismarck's short hair, and Bismarck said, "Be careful. Even if you are a battle cruiser, it may sink. I happen to be around this time. I may not be so lucky next time. Why do you want to help me? I should say, why don't I help you? There is something wrong with your mentality. If you continue like this, it is not impossible to fall into the deep sea." Alaska's voice was hoarse. "Why do you want to help me?" she shouted loudly, with a cry in her voice. She saw that one of Bismarck's arms was injured in the artillery fire. Although there was no bleeding and no flesh and blood was torn, that was because the ship girl could not easily see it, but she knew that Bismarck had suffered a lot of damage, even though he had such a thick protective cover. But got hurt for himself. On the other side, Bismarck raised his head and looked at the sky. No matter how fierce the battle on the sea was, the sky would always look like that. The sky will not be clear because of joy, nor will it be cloudy because of sadness. It will always be the same. Bismarck waved his hand towards Alaska and said, "Cheer up, it's just a failure. I have failed many times before, and I was yelled at by the admiral for it. How can I just give up like this? Maybe we will have to fight together in the future." Alaska looked at the outstretched arm. The gunfire fell and splashed water around them, but the gunfire from the destroyers was difficult to cause harm to people. She whispered, "Yes, we still have to fight." At this time, Prince Eugen ran over. "What happened to Sister Bismarck? You are not injured, right? The battle is still going on, don't stop here." Bismarck waved his hand towards Alaska, motioning for the other party to leave, and said, "You go first, we are going to fight." Her actions of chasing people away were obvious, and her words were not polite. On the other side, Alaska looked at Bismarck's handsome face, soft lines, and pursed his li looking for the lost ship girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 138. Balloons and colorful strips were hung all over the buildings and trees of the town hall, and long tables were placed in the usually empty playground. The food was put out one by one, each on a large plate. Excluding the food made by a certain admiral himself, the other food was quite appetizing. Bismarck spent less than half of the steel in our garrison repairing the ship alone. Admiral Luoxia, a young girl with long black hair and a white military uniform, was stunned for a moment, then raised her hand and said, "It doesn't matter, this time we defeated a formation composed of a deep-sea aircraft carrier and 2 deep-sea battle lines. Haha, this is a record that has never been achieved before. In the future, I can show off to my classmates, and the steel can be reimbursed at the ship girl headquarters." Destroying a powerful fleet with just one garrison was indeed a commendable achievement. The only thing that makes people feel uncomfortable is that both Alaska and Bismarck were damaged. Alaska was severely damaged and Bismarck was partially damaged. But even so, this repair almost consumed most of the resources of the garrison. After all, being powerful also comes with huge consumption. If destroyers are sent to attack, the resources consumed may be much less, and the repair cost of a big break is also small, but it will be difficult to win. That is to say, it is difficult for some powerful garrison houses to afford those powerful battleship girls. Therefore, many garrison houses do not just focus on building ship girls. Balance is the most important thing. But no matter what, if you suppress such a powerful deep-sea ship girl this time, you will obviously be rewarded if you report it to the top. However, at this time, the secretary ship of the garrison on the other side picked up the report and said, "Bismarck is a mercenary hired by us. Her expenses will not be reimbursed by the ship's headquarters. We have to pay for it ourselves." The girl Luoxia was poking a small piece of apple in the fruit plate with a toothpick. When her secretary ship said this, she couldn't help but be stunned. Can't be reimbursed? So it would be a bit miserable to pay for it yourself. How to take advantage of the loopholes in the report to the ship girl headquarters. Then the secretary ship said, "How about asking Bismarck not to repair all the repairs for the time being, and we can pay for the rest? She is a mercenary after all, isn't she? How about that?" The person who raised the question at this time was Alaska, who came over at this time. She had withdrawn from the battle at the beginning, and now she has completely repaired the ship's equipment. The secretary ship didn't know what to say for a while. Alaska was her predecessor and the most powerful combat force in the garrison, but the opponent usually couldn't deal with Bismarck. It's really strange that Bismarck is thinking about Bismarck today. I withdrew from the battle very early. This victory was entirely led by Bismarck. Admiral, we can't deduct Bismarck's steel, that won't work. Luoxia nodded like an honest child and said, I know, I still know this. Anyway, the resources of the town hall are not enough, so I just ask my dad to borrow them. The ones in his town hall, there are many resources. Then Luoxia continued, she doesn't understand yet, don't be harsh on her. She was talking about the secretary ship, and she was the ship's girl who had just become the secretary ship. Alaska chuckled and walked away, saying as he walked, if you say something wrong, you should be cruel. As they talked casually, the sky gradually turned dark, and the long table was already full of food. Sitting at the long table, Luoxia leaned on the table and said, Bismarck should be repaired soon. It's almost time. It's been several hours. As they said this, Bismarck, who had changed into fresh clothes, came over. The banquet officially begins now. Food, fireworks, carnival, performances, the sky darkens and bonfires are set up around the place. These have already been prepared, and of course you have to enjoy them after the battle. Even the destroyers make an exception and allow some low-alcohol wine to be drunk at this time. Bismarck sat nearby and watched the grand banquet, but she did not join in the carnival. Prince Eugen also sat next to her. Then Luoxia came over during the banquet. She raised her wine glass and said, won't Bismarck go to join them? I'll forget it. Oh, why, everyone is so happy. I'm not used to this kind of atmosphere. It's not good to be too serious, so at least let Prince Eugen attend. I never let her stay with me in the first place. Then Prince Eugen, let's go play. Prince Eugen shook his head and said, I don't have to. Bismarck also advised, go, you should have some fun. Then I'm going there. Prince Eugen was looking forward to it, but his sister Bismarck didn't join, so she stayed with him. At this time, someone was talking to her sister, so she didn't need to stay all the time. And it seemed that the other party had something to say. Prince Eugen left. At this time, Rocha and Bismarck sat side by side, and then said, Alaskan is very powerful, but his temper is a bit arrogant. I can tell. Everyone in the garrison has light cruisers and destroyers, but no heavy cruisers. Alaska is a battle cruiser, which is our main force. It is very powerful, but it is a bit arrogant and aggressive, so it is not suitable to be a flagship. Battle cruisers are also something to be proud of. My father is actually a very powerful admiral, so I became an admiral at a very young age. Now there are so many ship girls in the garrison, and many construction resources are supported by my father. Even if I ask you to be a servant Bing, I will ask my dad to sponsor a lot of resources when the time comes. It's a bit embarrassing to say this, but there's nothing I can do about it. Luoxia said this without any taboo. There is still some gap between me and becoming an independent admiral, but I am working hard anyway. Bismarck said, but you are also working hard, and you are not a bastard. Luoxia also said, a battleship like yours consumes a lot of money. It's quite big, so if the enemy is a destroyer, I prefer hand-to-hand combat. This doesn't consume ammunition. Anyway, the deep-sea destroyer doesn't know how to escape and will come up to it. Many garrison buildings cannot actually afford battleships like yours, so they don't dare to let you attack. Bismarck narrowed his eyes slightly and said in a deep voice, what exactly do you want to say? Luoxia said under the influence of wine, Sister Bismarck, can you stay here? When Bismarck heard this, he simply shook his head. Can't you really stay here? No. Why? There's no reason why. At this time, everyone around the bonfire in the distance dispersed, and a destroyer lit fireworks next to it. Then a large group of fireworks flew into the night sky and exploded. The fireworks were beautiful and brilliant. Luoxia added, Bismarck must have had a good time here too. Not bad, right? So can you not leave? If you don't want to, then it doesn't matter if you don't join our garrison. The young Admiral Luoxia raised her hand and raised a finger with a thoughtful expression, just like a consultant, just as a guest, you are still yourself, not the ship girl of our guardhouse. Luoxia continued, otherwise it would be very difficult for you to wander around like this. Bismarck was silent, and it was certainly hard to wander around, but she was not someone who enjoyed herself, nor was she traveling around. I have been looking for the Admiral for a while. Although the hope is slim, I can't give up. In fact, up to now, the hope of finding the Admiral has been shattered. Originally, finding one's own Admiral in a vast sea of people is different from finding a needle in a haystack. The most important thing is, where is the Admiral? Completely unaware, many people have given up. I was originally ready to give up, but my other sister Xiaozai didn't give up. How could I dare to give up? After all, traveling and searching as a mercenary has now become a habit. Traveling and fighting around, it is easy to sink, but sometimes I think that if I sink, I might be able to meet the Admiral. In any case, Bismarck was not good at lying. At this time, she said, it's quite hard. On the other side, Luoxia stammered, if it's very difficult, can you join our garrison, please? You can say anything, but not this. Bismarck stood up. She didn't like to beat around the bush and didn't care what the other person thought. She said bluntly, I don't want to join your garrison. After a moment of silence, Bismarck continued, also, I will leave here tomorrow and suppress the wave of deep-sea ship girls. There shouldn't be much going on next. Having said this, Bismarck walked away without saying a word. The young Admiral Luoxia looked at Bismarck, who stood up and left. Looking at the back, she drank the wine in her hand. Normally she wouldn't say such a thing. Today she dared to say it because she was drunk, but she seemed to have failed. At this time, she looked at the fireworks at night and was a little confused. Soon after, the dinner ended successfully, and everyone on the destroyer had a great time. The only one who was unhappy at this time was probably Luoxia, especially when Bismarck packed his things and formally bid farewell to him the next day. At this time, everyone was standing by the pier, listening to Bismarck saying goodbye to him. Luoxia thought to himself that his words last night were indeed too abrupt. But she still made a last-ditch effort and said, "I'm sorry, I said that, but is Bismarck really going to leave?" "Yes, I have to leave too. I have been out for such a long time. I'm sorry to say that, but I really can't bear to do it." He felt ashamed of what he had done at night. In fact, fishing for boats was always accompanied by rejection, but Luoxia had obviously not grown up yet. Her shoulders shrugged slightly, tears welled up in her eyes, but she stubbornly refused to shed them. Then she said, "Why? I know I was wrong. I apologize to you. I shouldn't have asked you that." The tears still remained unsatisfactory, and she wiped them with her hands. The sea breeze blew her hat to the ground, but she did not pick it up. On the other side, Bismarck reached out to pick up the hat, and then put it on the head of the girl who wanted to cry. "No need to say sorry." Luoxia held her hat with both hands. "I know, who calls me an idiot for asking such a question?" Biting her lip with her teeth, the girl said, "I won't keep you, I just want to ask, can I call you sister?" "Sure." Bismarck especially couldn't bear the tears. She said, "You are now the admiral of a garrison. You cry at every turn, and there are so many ship girls who need you. There is no other way. I just want it and can't help it. Sister Bismarck must come back often in the future. If you need help, we will give you our full support. Please treat this place as your home." I still want to ask why. Can you tell me? I'm not angry, I just want to know why Sister Bismarck became a mercenary. It is better to have a garrison. I have no other intention. I am not trying to persuade you, I just want to know. I know, Luoxia explained as he spoke, explaining over and over again that he just didn't want the other party to misunderstand. On the pier, in the sea breeze, Bismarck said, "I am not here to save the world or destroy the world. I am traveling around the world to find my admiral, my husband. If I really can't find him, at least I found my sister, an inattentive little one, as big as a small bean, who suddenly ran away without listening to a single explanation." The sister she mentioned was naturally Xiaozai. Luoxia asked, "Sister Bismarck's admiral? He must be a very powerful person." "It's okay with this," said. Bismarck was not prepared to say too much. On the other side, Alaska, who was standing nearby, stretched out her hand to shake Bismarck's hand. She looked at her admiral and then at Bismarck. Then she said, "I don't know what happened to you, but thank you for saving me. I am best at rock music. I have never had the chance to invite you to listen to my performance. It's a pity that you are leaving. Sometimes the thought is the change happened so quickly, and now when I think back to my past thoughts, I can only laugh." Alaska handed over an iron box, which contained coins. "I don't know where the gold coins were. Gold coins are hard currency." She said, "By the way, your commission." Luoxia also said, "You must miss us." Bismarck was silent for a moment and took the iron box, then looked at the tears on Luoxia's face and said, "You gave me a pair of sunglasses before. They are very beautiful and I like them very much." She was not good at comforting. Luoxia smiled, laughing at the funny gift she had given her. When Bismarck mentioned it, she said, "Wearing sunglasses in winter is weird. You must be wondering why I gave you sunglasses." Probably very handsome as he said this, Bismarck put on his sunglasses on his face. The sunglasses covered his original soft lines, and now he looked a bit like a big brother. Giggle. "Stop talking, let's go." Before he could finish his farewell, Bismarck took Prince Eugen to the sea, waved his hands and turned around. She said again, "Okay, no need to send it away. Goodbye, Sister Bismarck. And, goodbye, Prince Eugen. I will miss you, and you must come to us if you encounter anything in the future. Bismarck and Prince Eugen did not look back, they marched on the sea. The figures behind him are getting smaller and smaller, the garrison is getting smaller and smaller, and the voices of farewell are getting smaller and smaller. At this time, Bismarck, who was sailing on the sea, said, "Okay, Prince Eugen, get ready to go back." "Back to where?" "Of course I'm going home, back to Sichuan. I miss Tirpitz a little bit." Prince Eugen was like a little follower. She said quickly, "Yeah, okay, I'm going home. But this time it's a few days earlier than usual." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 139. Rulers, pencils, erasers, scattered tools were placed on the desk. At this time, Sugu was holding a pencil and writing and drawing on a piece of paper. He also learned simple design before and used Tianzheng architecture. Although I haven't used it much in actual work and have forgotten a lot of it now, I have not forgotten some very basic knowledge. I won't consider the columns and structure, no, but I can still make some comments about the layout of the room. So the drawings he drew at this time were about this aspect, and he didn't want a very precise structure anyway. However, it was originally modified on the original basis, that is, the layout of some rooms needed to be changed, such as adding bathrooms, cloakrooms, and drainage and water supply systems to the rooms. The floor of the bathroom must be slightly sloped to facilitate drainage. If possible, it's better to use hidden wires. Forget it, it doesn't matter. Insurance and open space. At this time, he was mumbling and making various notes on the drawings, and then Bazai suddenly called him. "Admiral." Yasugu continued to draw the drawings and said casually. He already knew that Bismarck was coming back. "Sister is almost coming back. It's almost time to count the days." "I know." Bazai said again, "Sister is coming back." "That's great." Hearing that his admiral had no eyesight at all, Bazai said, "Sister, come back soon, so Admiral, you have to help me." Sugu was busy at this time. Without raising his head, he asked, "What are you busy with?" "Help me clean up the room without Bismarck around." She didn't know how many notebooks she bought outside besides drawing. Those things must not be seen by her sister, and she was too lazy to clean them up. Now that she had found the admiral, that would be easy. "Tidying up the room? Are you embarrassed to ask me for such a simple thing? Bazai basically stays here these days. In the words of the other party, he is too lazy to run around. Here, the admiral is here, Lexington is in charge of the food, and he can bully Xiaozai when necessary. It is really a wonderful thing. As for everything else, as long as she eats, drinks, sleeps and reads a book, she can live her life well." At this time, Sugu thought to himself, "You are idle all day long and only know how to lie down every day, and you are very busy every day, but you are just tidying up the room, but you have the nerve to call me?" Bazai said, "If you don't help me, when my sister comes back and sees the mess in the room, she will definitely beat me." On the other side, Xiaozai was sitting next to her. When she heard Bazai's words, she said seriously, "I'll just beat you to death." "Admiral, I can't help her." Sugu waved to Xiaozai, who walked to him sensibly. Then he picked Xiaozai up, stopped writing, and said, "You can have enough food and clothing by yourself. I'll definitely help, but I won't agree so easily." Bazai said with a matter-of-fact expression, "I'm too lazy to move." After hearing Bazai's words, Sugu looked at the other party and twitched his eyebrows. "Even if you're too lazy to move, what's with your expression of complete shame? It's too much. Since you are asking for help, you have to say something like I am not good at it perfunctorily. How can you directly say that you are lazy? Seeing that his admiral disagreed, Bizai said again, otherwise, I'll bring all my books to you. Sugu said firmly, no. Stuff it all into yourself. There is a small house and fireflies here, how can the little girl see those things? Sugu continued, just pack up some notebooks and stuff them under the bed. Bazai whispered, besides the notebook, there are quite a lot of other things. Sister is not allowed to buy those things and cannot be seen by her. What did you buy? Dolls, figures, notebooks, limited edition notebooks. Is there a limited edition of this book? Of course, please don't underestimate us. Why should I look down upon this? Even a mere book should be made into a limited edition. Seeing that her admiral still disagreed, Bazai made a big move and said, Admiral, do me a favor. At worst, I will give you benefits. Welfare. I bought a sewing machine before and wanted to make my own clothes. I made many sets. If you help me, Admiral, I can show you how to wear them. Bazai turned around on the sofa and counted his fingers as he spoke, officer, nurse, Christmas outfit, teacher, salesperson. Sugu was not fooled at all. He was someone who had been to the other party's residence. He said, your sewing machine must have been gathering dust for a long time. I covered it with a piece of cloth and put it in the corner. I saw it. And do you really know how to tailor? This pricked Bazai's pain. She thought to herself that she really didn't know how to sew, and she could also draw books. She was the author of books out of interest. Bazai said, there is a large poster of my sister under my bed. I can give it to you. Just leave it, keep leaving it. Bazai said seductively, posters without clothes? I've never seen you sell your sister's boat like this, Bismarck without clothes. Then I couldn't agree to it, at least not when there was a little girl around. I'm not interested, that's what I said. Of course I still have interest, but now that there are so many people around me, I definitely have no interest anymore. No, the admiral must help me. Bazai was a little embarrassed by his admiral's indifference, even though he had already taken out his most precious things. Hearing Bazai's words, Xiaozai, who was gloating about his misfortune, huddled in Sugu's arms and chuckled. They talked casually, and Lexington came out of the kitchen with a fruit plate, and then placed the fruit plate on the table. Xiaozai climbed down from Sugu's arms and twisted a piece of apple with her hands. While eating, she walked to the sofa to see Bazai's expression, because every time she saw Bazai's distressed expression, she would be happy for a long time. But she didn't know that she was the prey. No matter how desperate the hunter was, the prey could not provoke him. Although Bazai didn't want to move, it didn't mean that he was still indifferent even if the prey came to the door. At this time, she grabbed Xiaozai and held him in her arms, squeezing her face. She only found Xiaozai's trump itself very interesting. The other party was brought back to the garrison by several Z-series destroyers one day, although she didn't know what she should have looked like as a child. But after just one glance, I felt close. So she likes to hold Xiaozai like a doll. She has the same hobbies as Sugu. Don't hug me, otaku, let me go. Xiaozai struggled as he said this. Bazai didn't care at all. She put her chin on Xiaozai's head and said, Admiral, if you help me, I can show you my sister's private photos. Forget it, I still won't look at the private photos or anything like that. He was really worried that Bazai would show some explosive photos, and then he would be dragged into the water as an insider. There are no naked photos you think of. How dare I do that kind of thing? It's just ordinary photos, photos of our life. Ordinary photos. That's still a bit of interest. Sugu was still hesitating, thinking, if he agrees now, will he appear to be a useless person who refuses to help? It may also be misunderstood that they pay a lot of attention to Bismarck, so they agreed when Bazai proposed the bargaining chip. However, Sugu was still hesitant at this time. When it came to Bismarck, Sugu was okay, but Xiao Zai became excited. She strangely did not struggle in Bizai's arms. She looked at Sugu, who was still hesitating, and said, "Admiral, let's go. I want to see Sister Miao's photo." The little girl's eyes were wide open, and her look of anticipation was irresistible. "Okay, then if Xiao Zai wants to see it, there is nothing we can do." Sugu also said this. Lexington had just brought the fruit plate and was listening nearby. When she heard the words, she said, "Admiral." Sugu looked at the other party's half-smiling expression, and was about to explain, but before he spoke, Bizai said on the other side, "Sister Lexington, I want to borrow the Admiral for a day." Lexington was a little stunned when he heard Bizai's words. Why did he say borrowed words to himself? Then I thought about it, and since I used the word borrow, it means that in the other person's heart, the Admiral belongs to him. Thinking of this brought a bright smile to Lexington's face. She wasn't going to deny it, and of course she wasn't going to admit it just yet. She wasn't that shameless. She just said happily, tidying up the room, "I'm good at this, I can also help." Of course Bizai didn't want Lexington to help. There were so many weird things in her place, and even she knew she couldn't let the gentle Lexington see them, so she quickly said, "No need." Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 140. The Leipzig girl with short blonde hair wears a scarf on her head. At this time, like an old lady, she is holding a broom to clean the cobwebs on the ceiling. Next to her, Sugu was holding a bucket. He stuffed the rag into the bucket and soaked it before picking it up, wringing out the rag and starting to wipe the table. Although Lexington had always done the work at his place, Sugu was rejected when he wanted to help, always saying something like "this is what a woman should do, so the Admiral should stay out of it." At this time, he helped organize and clean the room. Although he had not done hygiene for a long time, it did not mean that he did not know how to do it. He finished wiping the table and then wiped the dust on the table legs with the rag. Xiao Zai wanted to help, but he refused because the little girl would be unhelpful at best. So in the end, Xiao Zai felt aggrieved because she couldn't help. She could only sit next to the useless Beizai and shout cheers, and then eat cookies. Soon after he wiped the table clean, he realized that the entrance hall had not been tidied up. He squatted by the entrance hall and looked around. He sighed and said, "Just put the shoe rack next to the cabinet, and these slippers, leave the slippers there on the shoe rack." He put cloth shoes and telescoping shoes on the shoe rack. There was no way to put the black boots on the shoe rack, so he put them in order. In this regard, he did have obsessive-compulsive disorder. Bizai said, "The ones with blue and red cats on them are my sister and I's slippers, the ones with the little fish on them are Prince Eugen's, and the black spots are Leipzig's slippers." Sugu doesn't want to know who these slippers belong to. After putting away the shoes, he twisted up a pair of socks. Although the socks were black and it was hard to tell whether they were dirty or not, they looked like they had been left there for a long time. He said, "Those socks, throw them all away, Bizai, please do whatever you want, you need to wash your socks." "I don't like to wear socks. I wear sandals in the summer and don't go out in the winter." Sugu was only confused for a second. On the other side, Leipzig snatched away the socks in his hand expressionlessly and uttered a few words, "I'm sorry, they're mine." There was no apology in that expression. Then they started to clean up the living room and looked at the things on the floor. Sugu said, "Leipzig, give me a bag. Throw away some things if you don't need them anymore." Of course, Bizai had no hope and could only direct Leipzig. "Tear down the posters on these walls. There are so many Bismarck posters that look weird, and there is no order in sticking them on the walls." Hearing Sugu's words, Bizai said quickly, "No, the poster is her treasure. It's not like throwing it away. You can stick it somewhere else." I used to help with home decoration when I was an intern. I believe that my level is more or less good. The cups in the bathroom are all arranged one after another. Towels, bath towels, hang them up one by one. Soon after, the living room and bathroom were tidied up, the walls were cleaned, and all the posters were repasted. The traces left by the tape were also scraped with a knife, and they were finally tidied up. Although the scratches were visible up close, they were not visible from a distance. Some are invisible. Many things have been rearranged, and most of the dolls have been stuffed into cabinets, out of sight. The windows were also wiped, first with a wet rag and then with a dry rag. A useless bicycle was polished and placed next to the entrance. By now, no matter what, the entire living room has been tidied up and feels much fresher. Then he started to clean up the room in Bazai. All the notebooks were put into cardboard boxes and stuffed under the bed. All the clothes that were thrown around were hung up on clothes hangers and placed in the closet. There were many types of clothes in the closet, but Sugu was too embarrassed to appreciate them. After slowly tidying up for a long time, the originally messy room became neat and clean. A lot, Sugu breathed a sigh of relief. It was finally over. He put the rag and broom back to its place, and threw the garbage into the special garbage dump in the yard of the community. Not long after, Suguki walked into the room, and then he saw Bazai exhale, with a look that sounded like, although I haven't done anything, I've worked hard for myself. If it weren't for her cuteness, she would be scorned as a slacker. Of course, Xiao Zai often calls others lazy, but does this have any effect on Bazai? But cuteness is justice, and Sugu doesn't want to care too much about this unfair world. Private photos. Sugu had done so many things and almost forgot them, but Xiao Zai remembered them clearly. It's already been prepared. Bazai suddenly took out an iron box from a hidden drawer like a show-off. Because the wooden floor was cleaned again, the floor was very clean at this time, so she sat on the ground like this. The most excited one among them is Xiaozai. Shugu and Leipzig naturally also want to enjoy the fruits of their labor. At this time, everyone is forming a circle. Bazai placed the iron box in the middle, opened the lid of the iron box, and saw that it was filled with photos, all kinds of photos. Sugu picked up a photo at random. The background was in the wilderness somewhere, with a small river full of trees. In the middle of the photo was a handsome woman. Just one look at Sugu could confirm that it was Bismarck because of her distinctive cat ear-like short hair. In the photo, Bismarck is standing by the river, and Bazai is holding Bismarck's shoulders. They are about the same height. Sugu said, "Why do you always look so weak?" "How can you say that I am weak? I just don't want to move." Then Bazai picked up another photo. In the photo, Bismarck was holding a shotgun, showing a troubled look. Next to her was a blue-haired girl holding a snare drum, seemingly doing cheering movements. That's the Prince Eugen. Prince Eugen is cheering up his sister. Why do you need a pep talk? It was at the amusement park. There was a game of shooting balloons. My sister promised to give me a big doll if I shot first, but she didn't succeed, so Prince Eugen cheered her up there. The big doll was placed in the living room. The panda, the bamboo I originally held in my hand, was torn off, and then a hole was opened to expose the cotton inside. I suggested throwing it away, but then Prince Eugen sewed the doll back up again, which made it difficult to handle. You don't care so much about the doll your sister won for you, so you are probably the most difficult person to deal with. This photo was taken in Jiangnan. I like those boats. Sugu looked at the photos handed over by Bazai. He looked at them one by one but could not see Bazai or Leipzig. There are no pictures of you, and neither is Leipzig. Because I was too lazy to go out, I stayed in the hotel and slept when I got there. There was no Leipzig because Leipzig hadn't found me at that time, and she hadn't come yet. This is a photo taken in Northern Europe. I didn't go there. My sister and Prince Eugen went there. They wanted to find you and Xiaozai. The scenery there was very beautiful and it seemed to be a tourist attraction, so Prince Eugen went there. The photo of my sister being taken outside. You see, Prince Eugen rests his head on his sister's shoulder like a little daughter-in-law. She is so short, she actually has to put stones on her feet to rest her head on her sister's shoulder. Saying this, Bizai laughed. This photo shows Prince Eugen hugging his sister. She looks shy, but she is probably the happiest in her heart, perverted Lily. Sugu took the photo. Prince Eugen originally had twin ponytails, but in the photo, Prince Eugen did not tie his hair up like the Christmas costume in the game, but he was even cuter when his hair was not tied up. After reading all the photos little by little, Xiao Zai sat aside and felt a little melancholy. There were so many photos but only no photos of himself and sister Miao. He was disappointed. Suddenly thinking of something, Bei Zai said, I have the most explosive photo here. As she said this, she took out a box from under the bed as if she was trying to retrieve some treasure, and made a clang, clang, clang sound as she opened it. Of course, there was no holy light coming out of the box like a treasure box in the game. There were just a few notebooks inside. There was nothing to care about in these mere notebooks, nothing exciting. Bei Zai unexpectedly showed an evil and cunning smile. She picked up the book and opened it, and a photo suddenly appeared. She picked up the photo and said, if this box is accidentally discovered by my sister, and then she opens it. But the photo is sandwiched in the book and she can't see it. Then if she only sees these books, she will definitely think that I had to hide the notebook, and then I didn't try to open it, so she couldn't see this photo. This photo is a secret and must not be seen by my sister. My sister was drunk that day. Didn't you say that ship girls generally don't get drunk? You can get drunk if you want. There are so many people around you, and even my sister who is like a soldier sometimes wants to drink to relieve her sorrows. And my sister looks quite serious, but sometimes she is quite, what? Sometimes she is quite soft, like, a soft cat. We drank that day, and then we talked a lot together. My sister's drinking capacity is actually not very good. If she doesn't use the power of the ship suit, she will get drunk very quickly and even stain her clothes. Then I brought her a sweater to put on, and she didn't know it. Then I took a photo of her. The photo should be kept well, but it must not be seen by my sister. Sugu looked at Bismarck in the photo, looking at Bismarck wearing pink heart-shaped open-chested underwear. You can't help but ask Bismarck to wear pink heart-shaped open bra. But no matter what, the expression on Bismarck's face at this time was undoubtedly much cuter than usual. He was lying on the bed like a child, with hair like cat ears on his head that could never be neatly arranged. She bent one hand like the lucky cat placed in the entrance hall in Leipzig. Matching the scene at that time, her mouth opened slightly, as if to say meow. At this time, Sugu looked at the photo and had to say that just for this photo, it was worth helping Bizai tidy up the room for a whole day. Compared with the handsome Bismarck in other photos, this one is really adorable. Sugu smiled unconsciously as he looked at it. Xiao Zai wanted to take a look at it, so Sugu quickly raised the photo. Xiaozai stood on tiptoe and said, Admiral, I want to see. I want to see. Sugu hugged Xiaozai and asked the latter to sit in his arms, and then wanted everyone to watch together. After all, holding a cute little girl in your arms is really the most beautiful thing in the world. Holding Xiaozai in his arms, he was about to put down his hand, but suddenly some force ripped the photo out of his hand. But Leipzig was directly in front of him, Bizai was lying next to him, still dangling his legs at this time, and Xiaozai was in his arms. So who ripped the photo out of his hand?